For 20 years, I built my life around the rhythm of someone else's schedule. School drop-offs at 7:42 a.m. because traffic on Maple got insane after 7:50. Soccer practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Grocery runs at Trader Joe's on Wednesdays because that's when they restocked the good sourdough. I knew the neighborhood like a mail carrier. I knew which driveways to avoid when backing out. I knew which of my friends were secretly miserable in their marriages and which ones were pretending not to be. I also knew that every Saturday morning, my husband left the house at 6:15 sharp with his golf clubs in the trunk of his silver Lexus. He'd kiss me on the forehead while I was still in bed, whisper, "Back around 2, don't let the kids burn the house down." And I'd smile like that was still funny after 2 decades. His name is Mark. We met when I was 19, waiting tables at a steakhouse outside Dallas. He was 25, already in sales, already confident in a way that made me feel small and safe at the same time. He had that easy charm, the kind that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room, even when he's working it on everybody. By 23, I was pregnant with our first. By 25, I'd quit my job to stay home. It wasn't some dramatic sacrifice. It just made sense. His career was climbing, and daycare would have swallowed most of my paycheck anyway. We told ourselves it was temporary. Temporary turned into 2 decades. I don't regret being a stay-at-home mom. I loved being there for everything. First steps, field trips, late-night fevers, high school heartbreaks. But somewhere in all that, I became the background noise of our life. Necessary, constant, taken for granted. Mark's career exploded. Regional director by 40. Travel, conferences, client dinners. He started wearing tailored suits instead of off the rack. His watch collection quietly upgraded. Our house in Plano turned into a bigger house in Frisco with a 3-car garage and a backyard pool we barely used. The golf started around year 12 of our marriage. He said it was networking at first. "That's where deals get done," he'd tell me, shrugging into a polo shirt. "You wouldn't believe how many contracts close on the back 9. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Eventually, the networking talk faded, and it became just a hobby, stress relief, time with the guys. His main partner was some woman named Claire. At least, that's what he told me. "Claire's married too," he'd say casually while scrolling through his phone. "Her husband hates golf. She's actually pretty good." I remember raising an eyebrow the first time he mentioned her. "You're golfing alone with a woman every weekend?" He laughed like I'd said something adorable. "It's not like that. There's usually a foursome, and she's practically one of the guys." Practically one of the guys. I met her once, or at least I think I did. There was a charity tournament 5 years ago. Mark insisted I come. I bought a new sundress and even had my hair blown out, which felt ridiculous for a golf course, but whatever. Claire was tall, athletic, sun-kissed blonde hair and a low ponytail. She wore a fitted pink golf skirt and had legs that made me suddenly aware of my own soft, middle-aged body. She shook my hand and smiled like she was assessing inventory. "So you're the famous wife?" she said, her voice light but her eyes sharp. I laughed it off. "I don't know about famous." Mark's hand settled on my lower back, firm, possessive. "She keeps me sane," he said. Claire's smile didn't reach her eyes. Looking back, I should have felt something then, a crack in the air, but I was too busy making sure the kids had sunscreen and that Mark's boss's wife liked me. Life kept moving. Our oldest left for college in Austin. The second followed 2 years later. Suddenly, the house that once echoed with slammed doors and music blasting from bedrooms felt cavernous. I'd stand in the kitchen some afternoons and realize there was no one to cook for until dinner. Mark's golf days stretched longer. Instead of being back by 2, it was 4, then sometimes 6. "Slow play," he'd say. "You know how it is." I didn't know how it was, but I nodded anyway. The first real crack happened on a Tuesday in March. Mark had left his laptop open on the kitchen island. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that it chimed with a text message and the preview popped up on the screen. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I was just walking by with a basket of laundry. The message read, "Can't stop thinking about Saturday. Same time this weekend? I'll wear that blue one you like." My stomach dropped so fast I had to grab the counter. There was no name attached, just a number. But I knew. The air felt thin. I stared at the screen like it might rearrange itself into something innocent. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was about a shirt. Maybe I was being paranoid and pathetic. I clicked. I wish I hadn't, but I did. The thread opened to months of messages. Not years. Months. That somehow felt worse. Like it had grown quietly while I was still sleeping next to him every night. Pictures. Nothing explicit, but intimate enough. Her in a blue dress in a mirror. Her legs stretched out on a couch. Him responding with things I hadn't heard him say in a decade. "You look insane in that. Counting down till I get you alone." I felt like I was watching a version of my husband that belonged to someone else. Flirty, electric, hungry. There it was.
her name at the top. Claire. Of course it was Claire. I don't know how long I stood there. 10 minutes. 20. The laundry slid from my arm and spilled across the floor. I didn't even pick it up. They weren't just golfing. They were meeting at a condo downtown. I pieced it together from the messages. Our place, he called it once. My heart physically hurt reading that. Our place. We had a place. A 20-year mortgage and a life built in it. I scrolled further back. There were conversations about furniture, about splitting costs, about keeping it separate until the timing is right. The timing. I felt like I was going to throw up. When Mark walked in that evening, he found me sitting at the kitchen table in the dark. The only light was the glow from under the cabinets. He froze for half a second, just enough for me to notice. "Hey," he said carefully, "why are you sitting in the dark?" I pushed the laptop toward him without a word. He didn't pretend not to know. I'll give him that. He closed his eyes, exhaled slowly, and sat down across from me. "How long?" I asked. My voice didn't even sound like mine. He rubbed his face. "It's not what you think." I laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "I think it's exactly what I think." He stared at the counter instead of at me. "It started a year ago. It wasn't supposed to go this far. A year, a full year of Saturdays, of early kisses on my forehead, of me making sure his polos were clean. You've been building a life with her," I said quietly. "A condo, furniture, plans." He looked up then, defensive. It's not like I was planning to just disappear. The cruelty of that sentence hit me harder than anything else. "So what was the plan, Mark?" I whispered. "Ease me into it. Schedule a PowerPoint presentation." He flinched. He started talking fast after that, about feeling disconnected, about how the house felt empty after the kids left, about how I'd changed, as if I hadn't aged right alongside him.
As if I hadn't carried and raised his children. "You were always busy with the kids," he said. "And then when they left, it was like we didn't know each other anymore." I stared at him, this man I had loved more than anyone. "So you found someone new to know?" Silence. The worst part wasn't even the physical betrayal. It was realizing that while I was folding his laundry and texting him pictures of our daughter's dorm room, he was creating a parallel world. I asked him if he loved her. He didn't answer right away. That hesitation told me everything. He said, "I care about her." Care. Such a careful word. That night, he slept in the guest room. I lay in our bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every Saturday morning, every time I'd waved from the driveway, every time I defended him to friends who joked about men and their midlife crises. Around 3 in the morning, something shifted inside me. It wasn't screaming rage, it wasn't even heartbreak. It was clarity. Because as I thought about those messages, about the condo, about keeping it separate until the timing is right, I realized something else. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning an exit. And if they thought I was going to sit quietly in the house I helped build while they decided the right timing, they didn't know me at all. I didn't sleep after that. By sunrise, I had a plan forming in my head. Not revenge, not yet, but I was done being the woman in the dark kitchen waiting for the lights to come back on. I didn't confront Claire. Not at first. I didn't scream at Mark again either. That surprised him more than anything. The next morning, he came into the kitchen cautious, like I might throw a plate at his head. I was making coffee, calm. Too calm. He kept trying to start a conversation. "We need to talk about this." "We will," I said evenly, "but not before you go to work." His eyebrows pulled together. "I can take the day off." I shook my head. "No. You have meetings, right? Big deals closing on the back 9? That one landed." He looked away. He left for work without kissing me goodbye for the first time in 20 years. The house felt different after that. Not sad, not broken, just exposed, like the walls had been moved an inch and I was finally seeing the cracks. I spent that entire day doing something I hadn't done in years. I logged into every financial account we had. I wasn't clueless. I'd always handled the household bills, the kids' college funds, the grocery budget. But the investment accounts, the bonuses, the company stock options, that was Mark's territory. I trusted him. I didn't ask too many questions. I started asking them that morning. I pulled up statements, downloaded PDFs, compared transactions. And there it was. Monthly withdrawals I didn't recognize. At first, I thought maybe they were tied to his business travel, but they were consistent. Same amount, same date,
every month for 10 months. A condo association fee. My hands went cold again. He hadn't just been meeting her somewhere, he'd bought something. Or leased it. Either way, it wasn't small. I traced the payments further. There were charges at a high-end furniture store in Dallas, a West Elm delivery, a restoration hardware charge that made my stomach twist. He'd been decorating, while I was repainting the guest bathroom by myself because he said he was too slammed at work. I leaned back in my chair and let out a slow breath. This wasn't some impulsive fling in a hotel room. This was infrastructure. I printed everything. Not because I needed the paper copies, because I needed something physical to hold, something solid that proved I wasn't crazy. Around noon, I called a divorce attorney. I didn't tell Mark. I didn't even tell my sister. I sat in my car outside a nondescript office park 20 minutes away from our house and waited for my name to be called like I was about to take a test. The lawyer was a woman in her mid-40s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense energy. Her office smelled like coffee and paper. I told her everything. The golf, the condo, the messages. She didn't react emotionally. She just nodded and asked precise questions. How long have you been married? 20 years. Children? 2. Both over 18. Are you currently employed? No. That word hit differently sitting in that office. She folded her hands. Given the length of the marriage and your role as a stay-at-home parent, you are entitled to significant spousal support and a substantial portion of marital assets. Entitled. I hadn't thought about what I was entitled to in years. I thought about what needed to get done, who needed rides, what needed to be packed for lunch. She explained that if he'd used marital funds to purchase or lease a property for an affair, that mattered. A lot. You need documentation, she said. Do not confront him about finances yet, and do not leave the house. I nodded slowly. When I walked back to my car, I didn't feel hysterical. I felt steady, focused. That night, Mark tried again. We sat at the kitchen island. He looked exhausted. Maybe guilty. Maybe just inconvenienced. I ended it, he said quickly, like he'd rehearsed it. With her? Yes. When? He hesitated. Yesterday. After you found out. I held his gaze. So if I hadn't found out, it would still be going? Silence. He exhaled. I was confused. You were furnishing a condo, Mark. That's not confusion. His jaw tightened. It wasn't permanent. You were splitting costs. It was just a place to escape. Escape? From what? The woman who raised your kids? The house you picked out? The life you built? I asked him if he'd told Claire it was over. Yes. Does she know I know? Another pause. Yes. That stung in a weird way. The idea of her knowing about me knowing, imagining them discussing my reaction, my pain. I leaned back. I spoke to a lawyer today. That wiped the color from his face. You what? I spoke to a lawyer. He stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the tile. You're seriously jumping straight to divorce? You built a second life, I said quietly. What did you think the next step was? He started pacing. It's not that simple. We have history, we have a family. I almost laughed. You should have thought about that before you bought throw pillows with another woman. He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. I don't want to lose everything. There it was. Not, I don't want to lose you. Everything. I studied him. This man I had slept beside for 2 decades. The faint lines around his eyes, the expensive watch on his wrist. The confidence that used to make me feel safe now looked like arrogance. You already did, I said softly. The next few weeks were a blur of tension. He started coming home earlier, suddenly attentive, asking if I wanted to go to dinner, suggesting we take a trip, like he could patch over a year of deception with a weekend in Napa. I watched him carefully. His phone was never out of his sight before. Now he left it on the counter face up, overcompensating. One Saturday morning, he didn't go golfing. I canceled, he said. I nodded. Good. But something about his restlessness told me the story wasn't as finished as he wanted me to believe. I checked the phone records through our account online. The number was still there. Not as frequent, but not gone. Short calls, late at night. 5 minutes, 7 minutes. Closure, maybe?
Or something else. One afternoon, I drove downtown. I had the address from the condo association fee. It was a newer building, sleek glass exterior, valet parking. The kind of place young professionals post on Instagram. I sat across the street in my car, heart pounding. At first, I felt ridiculous, like some suburban wife in a bad TV drama. Then I saw her. Claire stepped out of the building in oversized sunglasses and a white blouse tucked into high-waisted jeans. Effortless, composed. She wasn't crying. She didn't look like a woman who'd just been ended. She looked irritated. She walked to a black BMW and got in. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. Seeing her was enough. She wasn't some fantasy. She was real, solid, existing in a space my husband helped create. That night, Mark said he had a late work dinner. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I waited. Around 10:30 p.m., I drove back downtown. His Lexus wasn't at the office parking garage. It was parked 1 block from that condo. My chest tightened, but I didn't cry. I parked further down the street and sat there in the dark, staring at his car. 2 hours, that's how long he stayed. When he finally came out of the building, I ducked low in my seat. I watched him walk with his head down, hands in his pockets. Not rushed, not ashamed, just comfortable. Like he belonged there. And in that moment, any tiny part of me that hoped he was confused or torn snapped clean in half. He wasn't struggling to let her go. He was managing me, keeping me calm while he figured out his next move. When he got home that night, he smelled like her perfume. I recognized it from the one time we met at that charity tournament. Light, floral, expensive. Dinner run late? I asked casually from the couch. Yeah, client wouldn't shut up. I nodded. Must have been exhausting. He smiled faintly. You have no idea. Oh, I did. I had a very clear idea. And that was the night I stopped thinking about saving my marriage. That was the night I started thinking about protecting myself. Because if Mark thought he was going to keep 1 foot in our house and the other in that condo until he decided which life felt more convenient, he had seriously underestimated the woman who spent 20 years holding his world together. He wasn't the only one capable of building something in secret. The next morning I made him pancakes, blueberry, his favorite. He looked almost relieved when he walked into the kitchen and saw me at the stove, humming softly like I used to when the kids were little. You're in a good mood, he said cautiously. I slept well, I replied, sliding a plate in front of him. It's amazing what clarity does for your stress levels. He studied me for a second, probably trying to decode that, but I kept my expression warm, controlled. I had spent the last 48 hours crying in the shower and making spreadsheets at the dining room table after he went to bed. I'd emailed the lawyer everything she asked for, statements, property records, phone logs, the condo address, screenshots of the messages he didn't realize I'd saved to a private cloud drive. Infrastructure, like she'd called it. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was building. That same afternoon, I opened a bank account in my name only. It felt strange, almost rebellious. For 20 years, everything had been ours. Joint checking, joint savings, joint credit cards, joint decisions, supposedly. But I realized something brutal. Joint only works when both people are playing on the same team. Mark had already drafted himself. He didn't notice the shifts at first. I kept dinner on the table. I asked about his day. I even sat beside him on the couch some nights while he watched ESPN, my hand resting lightly on his knee like muscle memory. He mistook composure for forgiveness. One evening he reached for me in bed. It had been weeks since he tried. I think he assumed I'd be too hurt or too angry, but there he was, sliding his hand along my waist, tentative. I miss you, he whispered. I lay still. There was a time when those words would have melted me, when I would have turned toward him instinctively, craving that connection. Instead, I thought about his car parked outside that condo, about the way he walked out looking relaxed, at home. You don't miss me, I said quietly. You miss stability. He stiffened. That's not fair. Isn't it? He rolled onto his back, frustrated. I'm trying here. Are you? I turned my head to look at him. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to keep 2 doors open. His jaw clenched. I told you I ended it. You also told me you had a work dinner. That shut him up. He didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. He just stared at the ceiling like maybe it would offer him a better script. The truth was, I wasn't even shocked anymore when he lied. I expected it. That expectation changed everything. It removed the sting and replaced it with something colder. Strategy. 2 weeks later, my lawyer called. I've reviewed everything, she said.
The condo is in an LLC. That's not unusual for investment property, but the funding trail connects back to your joint accounts. My stomach tightened. So it's marital property? Potentially, especially if it was acquired during the marriage using marital funds. She paused. You need to decide something, she continued. Are you preparing for negotiation, or are you preparing for war? War. The word echoed. I'm preparing to not be blindsided, I said. She exhaled softly. Good. That same night, Mark came home unusually quiet. He poured himself a drink without asking if I wanted one. That was new. We used to always ask. What's going on? I asked. He hesitated, then sat across from me at the dining table. Claire's pushing. I felt my pulse quicken, but my face stayed neutral. Pushing how? She's tired of being in limbo. Limbo, so that's what they called it. She says she wants clarity. I almost laughed at the irony. So do I. He rubbed his temples. She doesn't want to keep hiding. There it was, the real pressure point. Not guilt, not regret. Inconvenience. And what do you want? I asked evenly. He looked up at me, and for the first time in weeks, I saw something like fear. I don't want to lose my family. He already risked that. I know. His voice cracked slightly. I screwed up. That was the closest thing to ownership I'd heard from him, but then he added, I just need time. Time. He wanted time to figure out whether the 20-year investment or the shiny new condo felt like the better long-term return. I'm not a lease you can extend month to month, I said calmly. His eyes flashed with frustration. Why are you being so cold? Cold. Because I stopped crying in front of you? Because I'm not begging you to choose me? You think I'm cold, I said softly. You built a home with another woman. It's not a home. It has furniture. Mark stood abruptly, pacing again. You're twisting this. No, I said quietly. I'm seeing it clearly. Over the next few days, the tension thickened. He started staying out later again. Not every night, just enough to remind me he hadn't actually let her go. I didn't chase him. Instead, I met with a final advisor, recommended by my lawyer. A man in his 50s with calm eyes and a sharp mind. We reviewed retirement accounts, stock options, projected income.
Numbers that used to feel abstract now felt like oxygen. You sacrificed earning potential for the household, he said matter-of-factly. That's quantifiable. Quantifiable. I liked that word. Meanwhile, Mark grew more irritable. He'd snap over small things. The dishwasher loaded wrong, the thermostat set too low. It wasn't about dishes or temperature. He was unraveling. One night, around midnight, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. He was in the shower. I stared at it. I didn't need to check. I already knew, but I picked it up anyway. Claire, I can't keep doing this. I need to know if I'm wasting my time. I felt something strange then. Not jealousy. Pity. She thought she was waiting for a man to choose her. She had no idea he was still calculating the exit cost. When he came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, I handed him the phone. She's impatient, I said. He looked startled, then defensive. Why are you looking at my phone? Because you forfeited privacy when you started a second life. He stared at the screen, jaw tight. Answer her, I said quietly. He looked up at me. What? Answer her. Tell her what you want. He swallowed. This isn't the time. It's exactly the time. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he typed. I watched his face as he did it, watched the conflict, watched the hesitation. He hit send and set the phone down face up on the nightstand, like a man placing evidence on a table. I didn't ask what he wrote. I didn't need to. Because whatever he told her, it wouldn't change what I was about to do. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I'm ready, I said. For negotiation or war? She asked again. I looked out the kitchen window at the backyard pool we barely used, at the house I'd decorated, at the life I'd maintained while he quietly constructed another. War, I replied. There was a brief silence on the line. Then we move quickly, she said. And for the first time since I saw that message on his laptop, I felt something stronger than betrayal. I felt power. I woke up that morning with a strange sense of calm. It wasn't relief, and it wasn't happiness. It was focus. Sharp, cold, precise. After 20 years of pouring myself into someone else's world, I realized I hadn't just been standing still, I'd been invisible. But now, Mark would see me.
Not the woman waiting in the kitchen while he built another life. Not the wife who laughed at his just networking jokes. Me. Fully present. Fully awake. Fully in control. The lawyer had warned me the night before. Once we filed, the game changed. Everything became tactical. Timing, documentation, emotion, all weapons. And I realized that I'd been training for this moment without knowing it. 2 decades of running a household, managing schedules, negotiating with kids, teachers, and contractors, handling finances, and absorbing every mood swing of a man who suddenly wanted to play double lives. It all counted. I knew strategy. I knew leverage. I just hadn't realized until now that my life had been a training ground for survival. Mark came into the kitchen around 7, coffee in hand, as usual. He smiled faintly. Too faint. I could read that tension immediately. The way his hand hovered over the mug as if he was testing the waters. He tried to make small talk, commenting on the weather, the traffic, even the weird light hitting the pool through the blinds. I answered minimally. Cordial. Polite. Cold enough that the air between us crackled. Everything okay? He asked cautiously. Yes, I said. No, really, you look different. I laughed softly. You could say that. He frowned. You're not mad? I'm not here to be mad, I replied. I'm here to be clear. I set my coffee down, leaned against the counter and watched him. Really watched him. He didn't know I'd already frozen certain joint assets, shifted my savings into separate accounts, and prepared documentation for every single transaction connected to Claire. He didn't know I'd compiled every email, every text, every phone record. He didn't know that while he was trying to control 2 lives, I was planning my own exit strategy. For weeks, he tried to reconcile, to charm, to guilt trip. But I stayed neutral, observing, patient, waiting. It was almost like playing chess. Each move measured, each emotion calculated. I wanted him to think he still had options, but I knew he didn't. Not anymore. Then came the confrontation that changed everything. He walked into the living room one evening, holding a glass of whiskey, pacing nervously. We need to talk, he said, voice low, eyes darting. Claire, she's being unreasonable. She wants clarity. I told her I ended it, but his voice trailed. But what? I asked, calm, seated in the middle of the couch, arms crossed. He ran his hands through his hair, exasperated. She doesn't trust me. She thinks I'm hiding things. I don't know how to handle it. I stood and walked slowly toward him, measured, deliberate. Mark, this isn't about Claire, or her trust, or even you. This is about what you did to me, to us. For a year, you created another life while pretending to be present, and you expect me to just manage my feelings around that? He swallowed hard, his confidence cracking. I didn't want to hurt you. I was lost. Lost? I asked, incredulous. Lost as a teenager who can't find the bathroom. Lost as a man who tells his wife he's golfing while he's buying furniture for another woman's condo. Don't use words to soften what you built in secret. He flinched. That's when I realized the power had shifted. The man who had held my world in his hands for 20 years now felt small under my gaze. I laid it out for him clearly, coldly, mercilessly. The condo, the messages, the financial trail, the strategic cover-ups, all of it. I watched his face go through denial, anger, then fear. Fear was the most delicious. Not for revenge, not for humiliation. Fear because he knew the rules of this life I'd spent 20 years mastering. And now he was playing by them. He tried to defend himself. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. I never meant for it to go this far. I shook my head. Intentions mean nothing when the consequences are so concrete. You made choices, Mark. And now we're living with them. He stepped closer, voice pleading. We can fix this. I can fix this. Just let me make it right. I smiled. Slow, almost imperceptibly. No, you don't get to fix this. You get to live with it. You get to negotiate, to protect yourself, and to face what comes. But fix it? That door closed when you decided to build a life without me. The following days were a blur of legal preparation. I met with the attorney repeatedly, refining strategy, clarifying asset division, and calculating spousal support. I also spent hours going through every email, every receipt, every bank record again, making sure I had airtight documentation, while Mark assumed his charm or guilt could sway the outcome. I built certainty, and certainty, I discovered, was far more intoxicating than any relief or revenge could be. One evening, Mark tried to corner me in the kitchen. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "We can do this quietly. For the kids. For us." I paused, measuring him, my voice measured and slow. "Quiet? Mark, we've been quiet for 20 years while you constructed a parallel life. This is going to be loud, but it's going to be fair, and it's going to be mine."
That night, I couldn't sleep. I drove around the neighborhood in the Lexus, thinking about how our life had shifted. The streetlights glimmered off the asphalt. Houses on either side seemed normal, perfect, unaware of the chaos brewing in ours. And yet, inside me, something had ignited that no betrayal, no lies, no manipulation could ever extinguish. A sense of power, clarity, and resolve. I realized that I didn't just want what was fair. I wanted him to understand what it felt like to have someone you trusted quietly calculate every step you took against your own best interests. I didn't fantasize about humiliation. I didn't need him to grovel. I wanted acknowledgement, accountability, and the knowledge that nothing in our comfortable, suburban, perfectly decorated world would ever feel the same to him again. The first meeting with the lawyer and Mark together was surreal. He tried his usual charm, smiles, sighs, gentle jokes about awkward paperwork. I stayed silent. I didn't flinch. I didn't react. The attorney outlined the facts, the records, the evidence. She asked questions. I answered with precision. Every number, every date, every text I had saved came into the room like an arsenal. Mark's jaw tightened. His eyes darted between me and the attorney. I could see the calculation in his mind. He was weighing damage control versus confession. But I had him. I didn't need him to see it. I only needed to know it. By the end of that meeting, the power balance had shifted irrevocably. He wasn't calling the shots anymore. He wasn't a charming husband with a secret life. He was a man who had built a second reality and was now watching it crumble under meticulous preparation. The next day, I drove past the condo. Claire's car wasn't there. I didn't care. I didn't need it. The truth was, she had been a minor character in this story. The betrayal had come from him. The life I'd been building in silence, quiet, devoted, relentless, was my own. And now, finally, I was playing. Mark came home that night quieter than usual. No excuses, no rehearsed words. Just a man who knew the game had changed, and that he was no longer the only one capable of strategy. I made dinner, served it without comment. We ate in near silence. But I watched him. Every bite, every glance at his plate, every small hesitation as he considered what I had learned, what I had done. He was measuring his moves, just as I had for weeks. But now it was defensive. Fearful, respectful in a way I had never commanded before. And as he cleared his plate, I realized the irony. For 20 years, I had existed as the background of my own life. Invisible, indispensable, assumed. Now I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't waiting. I wasn't forgiving. I was fully, undeniably present. I had become the force he never accounted for, the variable he never calculated. And for the first time in decades, the world inside that house belonged entirely to me. No compromises, no shadows, no hidden corners. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need her or him to suffer. I didn't need to yell or scream or cry. I only needed to exist with clarity, to know that I had survived, adapted, and emerged fully realized. And in that moment, I understood something deeper than pain or betrayal. Sometimes, the most devastating power is simply knowing your own worth and acting decisively to protect it. 20 years of invisibility had ended, and I had never felt more alive.